The Willow Creek subdivision looked like every other American dream on the surface. Neat lawns, identical beige houses with American flags fluttering just so, kids riding bikes on wide sidewalks. But underneath that postcard perfection lurked the iron fist of the Willow Creek, HOA, and at the center of it all sat Karen Hargrove, president for the last 12 years. Karen wasn't just any board member. She was the self-appointed guardian of community standards, the woman who could smile sweetly at the annual barbecue while slapping a $250 fine on your mailbox for being 2 inches too far left. Claire Thompson had learned that the hard way. She'd moved into 142 Oak Lane 2 years ago after her divorce, hoping for a fresh start in a family-friendly neighborhood. Instead, she'd become Karen's favorite target. First, it was the grass, mowed to 1.75 inches instead of the sacred 1.5. Then the offensive wind chime that supposedly clashed with the approved color palette. Most recently, Karen had circulated a neighborhood email calling Claire's front porch an eyesore that lowers property values for hardworking families. The message was polite on the surface. We only want what's best for everyone. Dear, but the subtext was clear. Conform or get shamed. Claire had paid every fine without a word. She'd trimmed, repainted, repositioned, and smiled through gritted teeth at every HOA meeting where Karen stood at the podium preaching about transparency, accountability, and the sacred trust of neighbors. Inside, Claire boiled. She watched. She noted every hypocrisy. Karen's own rose bushes were technically 2 inches over the property line, but no one dare mention it. Karen's husband was always away on important HOA business. Yet the woman never missed a chance to lecture single moms like Claire about stable family structures. It all came to a head on a humid Tuesday when Karen's latest letter arrived via certified mail. Violation notice. Relocation of non-compliant foliage required. Claire's ficus, the one she'd brought from her old life, had apparently grown too tropical for Willow Creek aesthetics. Karen demanded to be moved to the exact approved coordinates or face daily fines. The letter ended with Karen's signature flourish. Let's keep Willow Creek the envy of every suburb. Claire stared at the paper, then at the plant sitting innocently in her living room corner. She'd had enough of silent compliance. But instead of defiance, she chose strategy. She texted Karen, "I'll come by your place tomorrow to see exactly how you want it done. Maybe you can show me proper placement." Karen replied instantly, all warmth and condescension. What a wonderful attitude. Claire, community cooperation is what makes us strong. 10 a.m. Sharp. Don't be late. The next morning, Claire walked across the street to Karen's pristine colonial. Heart hammering, but face calm. Karen greeted her at the door in a pastel cardigan, pearls gleaming, looking every inch the gracious hostess. Come in, come in. I just brewed chamomile, none of that cheap store brand. Of course. Inside, the house smelled of lemon polish and superiority. Every surface gleamed. Every photo on the wall showed Karen shaking hands with local politicians, cutting ribbons at HOA events. Always the picture of moral perfection. They reached the living room, where Karen's own massive ficus stood like a throne in the corner. Taller, leafier, greener than anything Claire had ever seen. "This," Karen said, gesturing grandly, "is how a proper specimen should look. Notice the soil blend? Organic, sourced from a private supplier. Now, if you'll help me demonstrate the lift technique so you don't damage yours." Claire nodded politely, stepping forward. The pot was heavier than it looked. Karen positioned herself on one side, Claire on the other. "On 3, Karen commanded, voice syrupy. They heaved. The ceramic shifted. Claire's grip slipped, just enough, just at the right angle. The entire thing tilted, crashed, exploded across the hardwood in a shower of dirt and shards. The ficus flopped sideways like a felled dictator. Karen gasped, hand flying to her pearls. Oh my goodness, look what you've done. But Claire wasn't looking at the mess. Her eyes locked on something half buried in the spilled soil, a thick plastic bag taped shut, dusty, bulging. While Karen fluttered around calling for paper towels and muttering about insurance claims, Claire knelt and discreetly tugged the bag free, slipping it into her tote before Karen could notice. Her pulse thundered. Something felt wrong, very wrong, in the most delicious way. They cleaned in tense silence. Karen's smile never wavered, but her eyes had that tight, calculating glint. Accidents happen. Dear, just make sure your own plant is relocated by Friday. We can't have standards slipping. Claire murmured apologies, promised compliance, and left with the bag burning a hole in her bag. Back home, she locked the door, sat on the couch, and unwrapped it with shaking fingers. Inside, a plain white envelope. She opened it. Stacks of $100 bills, crisp, banded, thousands upon thousands. HOA dues, bribes? She didn't know yet. Tucked behind the cash was a faded photograph. Younger Karen, maybe 24, stood smiling in a park, arm around a man Claire didn't recognize and a little girl no older than 6. The girl clutched Karen's pinky. The man looked proud. On the back, nothing. No names, no dates. Just the image of a family Karen had never once mentioned in 12 years of preaching family values at every meeting. Claire's stomach twisted with dark satisfaction. The woman who fined her for a slightly crooked flag had an entire secret life buried under her own perfect plant. The silence in Claire's house felt electric now. She whispered to the empty room, Karen Hargrove, you just handed me the keys to your kingdom. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She laid the photo on her coffee table under the lamp and stared. Karen looked so happy in the picture, carefree, younger, human. The girl had Karen's sharp cheekbones. The man had kind eyes. Why hide them? Why bury cash like this? Claire thought back to every HOA lecture Karen had given about honesty being the bedrock of our community. The hypocrisy was almost poetic. She remembered the keys she'd felt inside the plastic bag, a small, worn silver one taped to the envelope. No tag, no label, just a plain old-fashioned key. Claire turned it over in her fingers. A key to what? She couldn't ask Karen directly. That would tip her off. No, patience had gotten Claire this far. She would observe, wait, and strike when the moment was perfect. The next day, she bumped into Melanie Hargrove, Karen's sister and HOA vice president, at the community mailbox. Melanie was the softer version of Karen, always carrying cookies and gossip. Oh, Claire, I heard about the little plant mishap yesterday. Karen was so gracious about it. Claire smiled sweetly. She really is a model neighbor. By the way, has she always been so particular about her things? Melanie chuckled. You have no idea. That ficus has been with her since her early 20s. Sentimental value. She says, wouldn't even let the movers touch it when she bought the house. Claire's ears perked. Early 20s. The exact age in the photo. She pressed gently. Must have been a tough time back then. Melanie's smile faltered for half a second. Oh, life happens. She doesn't like talking about it. Ancient history. But the flicker in Melanie's eyes said it wasn't ancient at all. Claire changed the subject to weather. But inside, she filed the slip away. Ancient history with cash and a hidden child. This was getting good. Back home, Claire pulled out the photo again. The little girl's eyes stared back with Karen's intensity. Did she leave you? Claire whispered. The question felt heavy, deliciously treasonous. She decided it was time to dig deeper. Karen had scheduled a neighborhood beautification volunteer day for Saturday, mandatory for anyone with recent violations. Claire signed up immediately. Perfect excuse to be inside Karen's garage, near that storage trunk she'd glimpsed yesterday while cleaning the mess. Saturday arrived bright and sunny, the kind of day Karen loved for photo ops. Residents gathered with gloves and tools, while Karen directed like a general in pearls. Remember, everyone, we're building community pride. Claire volunteered for garage organization duty, while others trimmed hedges. She slipped into the dim space behind Karen's SUV. The gray storage trunk sat exactly where she remembered. She pulled the silver key from her pocket, heart slamming. Inserted. Turned. Click. Inside, a fireproof lockbox. Same key worked again. The lid popped open with a rush of stale air. Manila envelopes. 3 passports. 2 worn wedding bands. A folded note. Claire's breath caught. First passport. Karen's face. But the name read Monica Fields. Second passport. Real name. Third, another alias. Fake passports? In Willow Creek. She flipped through the envelopes. Money transfer records. Legal papers in foreign languages. A marriage certificate for Monica Fields and some man named Robert. Date, 15 years before Karen moved here. Tucked behind it. Handwriting. You said you'd come back. She's still waiting. Claire's hands trembled with dark glee. The woman who fined widows for unapproved holiday lights had abandoned her own husband and daughter, changed identities, and buried the evidence under a plant while preaching family values. The wedding bands clinked softly, one inscribed, "Forever isn't long enough." Claire photographed everything with her phone, replaced the items exactly, locked the trunk, and slipped back outside before anyone noticed. Her pulse raced with the thrill of it. Karen's empire was built on lies, and Claire now held the wrecking ball. The volunteer day ended with Karen's usual speech. We all sacrifice for the greater good of Willow Creek. Claire clapped along, smiling the sweetest smile she'd ever faked. Inside she was laughing. The Karen who terrorized the neighborhood with absurd rules was about to learn what real exposure felt like. The days after the garage discovery blurred into a haze of careful planning. Claire kept the photos on her phone locked behind 2 passwords, but she studied them every night like a detective. The cash, clearly embezzled HOA funds, totaled over $40,000. The note haunted her most. She's still waiting. The daughter, now probably a teenager, waiting for the mother who'd vanished into suburban respectability. Claire started small. She accidentally left her phone at Karen's during a follow-up meeting about the relocated ficus. Karen, ever the gracious tyrant, invited her back the next morning. No problem at all. Dear, I'll leave the side door unlocked. Just don't touch anything. Perfect. Claire arrived early, slipped inside, and went straight for Karen's home office. The laptop sat on the desk, password protected. Of course. But Claire had watched Karen type it once at a board meeting, the year she became President plus Willow Creek standards. It worked. The inbox was a goldmine of hypocrisy. A flight confirmation from 2 days ago, Chicago, not the Denver Leadership Summit Karen had bragged about at last month's meeting. Another email from an airline rewards program. Thank you for choosing us again for your frequent Chicago visits. Map history showed repeated trips to the same neighborhood near a middle school. Claire's stomach flipped with bitter amusement. While Karen fined residents for unapproved visitors, she was jetting off to see the daughter she'd abandoned. A password-protected folder labeled MF sat on the desktop. Claire didn't crack it. Not yet, but the name Monica Fields matched the marriage certificate. She copied screenshots, logged out, and left the phone exactly where she'd forgotten it. When Karen returned the device with a patronizing smile, Claire thanked her profusely. You're such a pillar of this community. Karen, we're lucky to have you. The sarcasm tasted like victory. That afternoon, Claire visited Mrs. Thompson across the street, the sweet older widow everyone loved and Karen tolerated. Over iced tea on the porch, Claire steered the conversation. You've lived here forever. Ever notice anything off about Karen's past? Mrs. Thompson's eyes sharpened behind her glasses. Oh, honey, I've seen things. Years ago, Before you moved in, police came asking about a woman connected to Karen. Said it was personal matters. Never came back, but stuck with me. And those sudden HOA conferences? Always to the same city. She'd return flushed and snappy for weeks. Claire pressed gently. Did she ever mention a daughter? Mrs. Thompson hesitated, then leaned in. Once, after too much wine at the block party, she slipped and called someone Lily. Looked like she regretted it instantly. Told me to forget it. Man, well, in her case, people disappear, keep secrets, snap when you ask questions. I've seen the pattern. Trust your gut. Claire, women always know. The confirmation settled like warm satisfaction in Claire's chest. Karen wasn't just a bully. She was a fraud who'd built her throne on stolen money and abandoned blood while terrorizing everyone else for minor infractions. The black humor of it all made Claire chuckle in the shower later. Karen lecturing about moral decay while hiding a secret family and fake passports. Claire's patience was paying off. She started documenting everything. Every fine Karen had ever issued her. Every sarcastic email. Cross-referenced with the flight dates. The picture was damning. While Karen was in Chicago visiting family she didn't have, she was docking residents' paychecks for aesthetic violations. The escalation came at the monthly HOA board meeting. Karen stood at the podium in her signature pearls, announcing new rules. No visible recycling bins after 8 p.m. It's unsightly for families driving by. Residents shifted uncomfortably. Claire sat in the back row, quiet as always. But this time, she had a folder in her lap. When Karen opened the floor for community concerns, Claire raised her hand slowly. Karen, she said, voice steady and sweet. I've been thinking about family values lately. You talk about them so beautifully. Makes me wonder what would the neighborhood think if they knew about Monica Fields. The room went still. Karen's smile froze. I'm sorry. Dear, Claire stood, projecting her phone screen onto the meeting projector she'd quietly hooked up earlier. The marriage certificate appeared first. Then the passports. The photo of Karen with the hidden family. The cash bundles. The note. You said you'd come back. She's still waiting. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's face drained of color. This is a private matter. How dare you invade my privacy? Claire's reply was ice-wrapped in politeness. Privacy? Like the privacy you denied me when you emailed the entire neighborhood, calling my porch an eyesore? Or the privacy of the 37 residents you fined last year for grass length while you embezzled dues for secret Chicago flights? Melanie tried to intervene, but the residents were already murmuring. One man stood. Wait, that cash, those are our dues. Another woman. You abandoned your own child and preached family values at us? The room turned. Karen's perfect facade cracked like the plant pot, splintering, ugly, exposed. She sputtered. This is a witch hunt. The HOA rules protect you all. But her voice shook. The board members looked away. Even Melanie stepped back. Claire sat down calmly as chaos bloomed. The satisfying snap of Karen's empire fracturing filled the air like music. The meeting descended into glorious pandemonium. Residents who had cowered under Karen's reign for years suddenly found their voices. Mr. Patel from 219 Maple, who'd been fined twice for his culturally inappropriate holiday lights, stood first. So, while you were jetting to Chicago to visit the daughter you never mentioned, you were docking my account for string lights. Karen's hands clutched the podium, knuckles white. It's not what it looks like, but Claire wasn't done. She clicked to the next slide. Screenshots of the airline rewards emails. Denver leadership summits? Or Chicago school visits? Which is it? Karen. The room erupted. Someone shouted, Resign. Another. We want our money back. Karen's pearls suddenly looked cheap under the fluorescent lights. Her carefully curated image, the smiling, moral HOA queen, shattered in real time. She tried the victim card. voice trembling with practiced tears. After everything I've sacrificed for this neighborhood, you're attacking me over ancient history? Claire's laugh was soft but carried. Ancient history that's been funding your rose bushes and your fake passports? The same passports you never reported while enforcing background checks on new residents. The hypocrisy landed like a slap. Mrs. Thompson rose slowly. I remember the police visit. Karen, you told me it was nothing. Was that nothing your abandoned family? Karen's eyes darted like a trapped animal. The board members began whispering among themselves. Melanie, face burning, muttered, I think we need to table this. But the crowd wasn't having it. Claire spoke again, calm and measured. I'm not here to destroy anyone. I'm here because the rules you enforce on the rest of us should apply to you too. Transparency, accountability, family values. You taught us that. The words dripped with the sweetest venom. Residents nodded. Phones came out, people recording, texting spouses. The power shift was palpable. Electric, delicious. Karen's meltdown was textbook. She slammed the gavel, her own gavel, once, twice, then dropped it. This meeting is adjourned. But no one moved. Instead, the vice president, a nervous man who'd always deferred to her, cleared his throat. Perhaps we should vote on new leadership. The ayes were unanimous and thunderous. Karen stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish. Pearls askew, cardigan suddenly too tight. The woman who had dictated lawn heights for 12 years was being dictated her own exit. Claire slipped out quietly during the uproar, the taste of victory sharp and sweet. Back home, she poured a glass of wine, the cheap kind Karen would have sneered at, and toasted the empty ficus corner. The plant was gone, but the secret it had guarded was now free. The next morning, the neighborhood buzzed. Emails flew. A group chat titled, New HOA Transparency formed without Karen. Fines issued under her reign were being reviewed. Residents who once avoided Claire's porch now waved enthusiastically. Mrs. Thompson brought over cookies. You did what the rest of us were too scared to do. Honey, but Claire knew the real satisfaction was still coming. Karen hadn't resigned yet. She was fighting, sending desperate emails about misunderstandings and privacy rights. Claire watched from her window as Karen's lawn, once perfect, now sported a single dandelion. Poetic. 3 days later, the emergency board meeting was called. Karen arrived in full armor, new cardigan, fresh pearls, rehearsed speech in hand. She stood at the podium again, voice steady at first. I have dedicated my life to this community. The allegations are taken out of context. My past is my own. The funds were loans. The room was colder than the plant pot shards. Claire didn't even need to speak this time. The evidence spoke for her. The projector lit up again, this time with the note, You said you'd come back. She's still waiting. A collective sigh of disgust rippled. A mother in the front row whispered loudly, My daughter's the same age. How could you? Karen's composure cracked. Her voice rose, shrill and ugly, the real Karen finally showing. You have no right. I built this neighborhood. The board voted 7-0 to remove her immediately. Effective now. Security, 2 retired cops who'd always hated her fines, escorted her out while she sputtered about lawsuits. The door closed behind her with a satisfying click. Applause erupted. Someone shouted, Claire for president. Claire smiled modestly. Let's just focus on fair rules from now on. The black humor peaked when Karen's own rose bushes were cited for being over the line the very next week by the new board. Her perfect house suddenly looked ordinary. The woman who had weaponized politeness had been undone by the very standards she preached. Claire slept soundly that night for the first time in years. The neighborhood felt lighter, freer. Absurd rules were already being rewritten. Flags could be any size. Grass could grow a whole 2 inches. And, somewhere in Chicago, a teenage girl might finally get the truth her mother had buried under soil and lies. The weeks that followed were pure suburban poetry. Karen's former empire crumbled in slow, delicious increments. The new interim board, led by a no-nonsense retired teacher, reviewed every fine issued in the last 5 years. Over $87,000 in improper penalties were refunded. Residents who had quietly seethed for years now openly joked about the Karen era. Claire became something of a quiet legend. People stopped her at the mailbox to say thank you. Kids waved. Even the mailman gave her an extra nod. Karen, meanwhile, became a ghost. Her house sat dark most evenings. The once manicured lawn grew patchy. The ficus, replaced at HOA expense, now stood in the community center as an ironic monument with a small plaque, in memory of standards. Residents took selfies beside it, laughing. The black humor spread like wildfire on the new neighborhood app. Memes of Karen clutching pearls superimposed over the shattered pot. When the plant spills the tea, one caption read. Claire never posted, but she saved every screenshot. One afternoon, Melanie showed up at Claire's door. Eyes red, cookies in hand as a peace offering. I didn't know the full extent, she whispered. She told me it was just a messy divorce. I never imagined. Claire invited her in, poured tea, and listened. Melanie spilled more details. Karen had left her husband and daughter when the pressure of early motherhood clashed with her ambition. Changed names, started over in Willow Creek, built the HOA as her new identity. The cash was skimming, small at first, then bigger. The trips to Chicago were guilt-fueled visits that only made the lies heavier. Claire nodded sympathetically, but inside she felt the cold satisfaction of justice. The woman who had shamed single moms for unstable households had created the ultimate instability in her own. The satire wrote itself. Claire decided to close the loop. She mailed an anonymous envelope to the Chicago address she'd found in the map history. Copies of the photo, the note, the marriage certificate. No explanation, just the truth. Let the daughter decide what to do with it. Some secrets deserve daylight. The final blow came at the annual HOA barbecue, the event Karen had once ruled like a queen. This year, the new president invited Claire to speak. She kept it short. We all want a beautiful neighborhood. But beauty without honesty is just another lie. The applause was genuine. In the crowd, Karen appeared briefly, pale, uninvited, lurking near the edge. Their eyes met. Claire raised her plastic cup in a silent toast. Karen turned and left without a word. The power reversal was complete. The tyrant who had dictated every blade of grass now walked on uneven ground. Claire went home that evening, sat on her porch, the one Karen had once called an eyesore, and watched the sunset paint the houses gold. The neighborhood felt different. Flags flew at whatever sizes people wanted. Recycling bins stayed out past 8 p.m. without fines. Kids laughed louder. And Claire finally understood the real lesson. Patience and truth always outlast petty tyrants. The plant pot had shattered, but in its place grew something better, real community. She smiled into the quiet evening. Somewhere, Karen was probably staring at her own empty living room, the new ficus mocking her with its perfect leaves. The cash was gone, the secrets exposed, the empire dust. And Claire? She breathed easy for the first time since moving in. The Karen era was over. Justice, served with a side of suburban shade, tasted exactly as sweet as she'd imagined. Months passed, and Willow Creek settled into its new rhythm. The absurd rules that once defined daily life faded into funny stories told at block parties. Remember when you couldn't put out a trash can before 7 a.m. became the punchline. Claire never sought the spotlight, but the neighborhood quietly elevated her. When the permanent board election came, she won by a landslide, not because she campaigned, but because people remembered who had finally said enough. She accepted the role with one promise. Rules should protect us, not punish us. The applause that night was the loudest the community center had ever heard. Karen sold her house 6 months later. The moving truck arrived on a rainy Tuesday. Claire watched from her window as boxes were loaded. Among them, she was sure, a new ficus. No one waved goodbye. The former president left without fanfare. Pearls probably tucked in a jewelry case. Secrets finally too heavy to carry. The new owners were a young family who immediately planted wildflowers, technically against the old rules, but perfectly fine now. Claire kept the original photo in a drawer, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Every time she saw it, she remembered the moment the pot shattered and the power structure along with it. The cash had been returned to the HOA Treasury anonymously. The passports were turned over to authorities quietly. Identity fraud wasn't her fight anymore. Lily, the daughter, would get her answers in her own time. Some circles closed without Claire needing to force them. At the first board meeting under her leadership, Claire opened with a simple statement: "We've all made mistakes. The difference is owning them." No one needed the subtext. The room nodded. The era of pearl-clutching tyranny was officially buried. Years later, when new residents asked about the HOA's relaxed vibe, old-timers would smile and say, "It all started when a plant pot broke." They never gave full details. Some stories were better whispered. But everyone who lived through it knew the truth. One woman's patience, one accidental crash, and a whole neighborhood's worth of long overdue justice. Claire stood on her porch most evenings now. Ficus replaced by a simple herb garden. No rules about tropical plants anymore. The air felt cleaner. The flags fluttered freely. And somewhere in the quiet, she could almost hear the echo of that shattering pot and the satisfying crack of a tyrant's empire falling right beside it. The suburbs had their drama, their Karens, their secrets. But in Willow Creek, at least, the good guys finally won. And that victory tasted better than any perfectly manicured lawn ever could.